This is my 1952 Singer Model 1591, and the 1591 is one of the machines that has a direct drive motor, sometimes referred to as a potted motor, and it has a plug receptacle down here on this part of the machine. And today what I'm doing is attaching new wires to the foot pedal. Now, I have the original cord and foot pedal right here, and the wires look pliable. In fact, for the most part they are. But about a week or so ago, what happened was I had this machine over near my work area, and this part of the foot pedal, the wire had cracked. And because either I moved the foot pedal or I was using the machine, for some reason, all of a sudden half the wire was severed. And the original wires, the rubber insulation over the wires, the rubber coating, was cracking a little bit further up. So at the time, I did fix the foot pedal by shortening the wire at that end. But I decided that even though these wires are in good condition, that it might be better to buy new wires. And that's what this package is. And what I did was buy a new plug receptacle, because the pins go in here that are on the machine, that has two leads off of it. One will go to the foot pedal and one will go to the wall to power the machine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the original foot pedal, and I'm going to attach the new wires to the original foot pedal, and that's what I'm going to show you today in this video. Okay, now this is the original foot pedal for the 1591 and the original cords. Excuse me. And you can still see the cord looks supple, but just inside there it was cracking, similar to what you see here. And this is actually why I ended up buying new cords. I had fixed the foot pedal, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but there are minor cracks through here, which means that at some point it's going to keep cracking and not be safe. So this is the replacement cord I bought. It's black. It has a similar plug that will go on the machine, except that it's not the type that can be taken apart. The original Singer plug can be taken apart so that a Singer repairman could rewire this, but because I don't know how to do that correctly, I bought the type that does not come apart. So this might be considered more disposable, but it wasn't very expensive. And one end has two leads, and this will go to the foot pedal, and the other end is the wall plug, and this one is a polarized plug. One blade on the left. In the U.S., that's our standard, where the wider blade goes in the left side of a plug. So this is polarized. So those are the new wires, and what I have to do is attach these leads to the original foot pedal. So the first thing to do is to take the foot pedal apart, and on the bottom you will see 6 screws. There's one in each corner inside these rubber bumpers, and there are 2 in the center. You don't need to remove the 2 in the center. That actually holds the foot pedal mechanism to the bottom of the foot pedal. But you do need to remove the 4 in the corner, in each corner. And they come out very easily. The first time I opened this foot pedal, it probably had never been opened before, and it did stick a little bit, and I wasn't sure if I could force it, and So I asked someone who would know, and they said sometimes they just stick. So you take out the 4 screws, and in a moment I will show you how you remove the bumper and pull the foot pedal bottom off. It has lifted up from the place that it screws into, but it hasn't come all the way up. Now you will see on this end there is a little piece of plastic that is actually part of the bottom of the foot pedal. And again, you can see there that the cords are starting to crack, even though that's where I replaced them. And what you can do is just use a screwdriver and very carefully pry that up like that. And then you can make sure that you did get all 4 screws out. And of course you would do this when it's not plugged into anything, which is why we have this here. Now, because of this plastic piece, I also have to raise it at this end. And you want to be careful to preserve, these are Bakelite, which is how I pronounce it. I think people pronounce that differently. But this, you even want to maybe go like that. You need to get that plastic piece to come straight up without breaking. That's the most difficult thing about this, is having that plastic piece come straight up. And there you go. See, now it's up. And the wire will come out of there. And that is the inside. You can remove the 4 bumpers and the 4 screws just to keep them out of the way for a moment. Now, this is partly why I bought new wires. I don't have a soldering gun here. So when I quote-unquote fixed this, I didn't solder the ends. I wrapped it and put it to the screw it needs to go onto. It worked. It's not the best way to do it. It's better to have an actual end that is made of metal, or at least have a ring that's soldered. So that, by unscrewing, these were there on this lead, this screw and this screw is where those 2 were, just like that. So I've loosened those 2 screws and removed that, and now you're basically done with the old original cord. And you can just put that somewhere, and what I'm going to do is save it for the plug, for both plugs that are on it, if I ever need original Singer plugs. So here's the new wire with 2 professionally done leads. Excuse me. And so this will split apart a little bit. That's only about an inch and a half. And in order for them to reach between the two screws, I have to split that apart a little bit more. But basically, what I'm doing is taking this lead and putting it underneath that screw and tightening it. The other lead will go to the other screw and I'll tighten it there. And I'm going to use a craft knife to get that wire to be a little bit more divided. I don't want to just pull it. I don't want the plastic insulation or the rubber, I think it's plastic insulation covering, to rip. I also don't want to cut into the wire. But if I do it with a craft knife, it's better than just pulling it and having it go crooked. And I'm going to need about at least 2 inches of space. And I don't want to go any further than I have to, so that's how far I had to go. And now I'm just going to, like I said, put these leads under the screws and tighten the screws up. Oops. I want to make sure they're tight and that one is loose, that they're not going to remove or come loose. Okay, so now they're on there, and when I bring the wire away from there, I'm going to go right over this plastic. That's the plastic piece that was on the bottom when we took it apart. So the wire is going to go right over there, like that, and keeping the little movable pedal part in place, I am going to replace. It's easiest to do it this way. I'm going to put this right back into the cover, making sure that the wire is underneath the plastic here, like that, and that it's straight on the inside. So the wire's there, it's straight on the inside, the leads are connected. And now to replace a bumper, they look like this and they have corners. You can just lift the edge of the foot pedal and put the bumper back on like that. And you might have to press it together a little bit before you put the screws back in. And that's basically it for connecting a new wire to a foot pedal in this style. I think other style vintage Singer foot pedals are similar. I'm not an electrician. I have very little electrical background. I am not trying to teach people how to do anything electrically. I'm really just showing you how I'm replacing cords for one of my vintage machines. I could have bought a set of the same thing that comes with a foot pedal already installed. But because I wanted to use my original foot pedal, I'm doing it this way. And you can see that that has gone back down. The screws are tight, the bumpers are in. It looks just a little uneven on one side. So I'm going to make sure I have this all the way down. And there you go. Now to test this, I have the machine on a work table, and I'm going to take it into the hallway and use a plug that happens to be in my bathroom with a ground fault circuit interrupter, ground fault interrupter circuit. The type of plug receptacle in the bathroom has a little circuit breaker on it. So if what I've done is wrong, if I use that plug to test it, it'll pop the breaker on the plug before it does any further damage to anything. It'll cut the electricity off right away. So I'm going to go move the machine into the hallway, and I'm going to plug it in and see how this works. Now on the 1591, there is the pins and the plug are right here. And if you notice, there is a slight curve to the bottom of this plastic housing. And when I bought this cord, it was specifically for a 1591. Your cords, your receptacles, your plug may look different depending on what machine you're doing this for. But if I look at this, there's also just a slight curve on one side of it. So you have to make sure that you plug it in the right way to the machine. And I do have to say that this is more difficult to get on there than the Singer brand. But I've got it on there and it's tight. So now I'm going to plug it in and we'll see what it does. I just turned the light on the machine, so that means the plug is working correctly. I've got fabric under the needle on the machine. I've got the presser foot down, and I'm going to use the foot pedal. And obviously it all works. So this, the cord set and using my own foot pedal cost about $17. If I had decided to buy a new foot pedal with the new cords, it would have been about $40, a little over $40. But what I have now is my vintage machine with brand new cords and a vintage foot pedal. Safe to use. I don't have to worry about the wires cracking for a while, and yet I preserved the look of the machine by keeping the vintage foot pedal with it. But again, I'm not an electrician. I'm not trying to teach anyone how to do electrical things. I'm just explaining how I how I replaced the wires going to a foot pedal in order to have new fresh wires on a machine from 1952. There's something I noticed when I had this apart the first time, and I wanted to double check it, which is why I have it apart again. If you can see, I don't know if the camera will go out of focus, but I attached those leads under the screw to the right of two little prongs that stand up. And what I was thinking of is maybe bending the connector on the end of the wire a little bit so that I can actually get it to go in between those two prongs. That's probably the correct way that an original might have been done, because that way, if the wires move, which they shouldn't, but you wouldn't be able to pull the connector away from the screw. So if for some strange reason the screw would loosen up, the connector would still be underneath the screw because it wouldn't be able to pull out that way. So I'm going to loosen that up again and see if I can put it on there that way. I've loosened the screw, and you can see the connector. I'm lifting it up. I couldn't squeeze it under that way directly, but because I had it to the right of the post, what I might be able to do is just swing it over that way. And here's another simple thing. I think the screws actually come out, and if I had thought of that first, then I wouldn't be thinking I had to bend the connector. If the screw comes all the way out, you can just go like that. Like that. That's a good tight connection with the lead, and once I tighten that screw, it's not going to move at all. And that's what I mean. I can't pull it off of there. So if you should step on your cord or something, you don't have to worry that you're going to cause a short circuit or something, because the connector is not going to come out from between those two prongs. So I did reopen the foot pedal, and I'm redoing it, and I'm going to tighten that screw and attach the leads that way. Those are on there, in my mind, in a better way. I wanted to be able to do this and then use the machine without thinking about my foot pedal at all. So now I can do that. And you can see that I kind of have to work that wire around the bolt, but it doesn't loosen from the connection. So now I'll reassemble the foot pedal the way I showed you a moment ago, keeping the cord flat like that and making sure that the cord sits on top of or under, depending on whether you have it upside down or not, right along this edge of that plastic piece that fits into the cover. You've heard me call this a foot pedal through this video. It's actually the motor controller. That's the name Singer uses, sewing motor controller, and it has voltage and amps and everything on the back, and none of that would change simply because I've put new wires on it. And the other thing, as I said before, this is just one style of the vintage foot pedals. I know of at least 2 or 3. So when you go to do this for yourself, if you have any doubt at all, then just take your machine or the cords and a foot pedal to a Singer or sewing machine repairman and have them do it for you. It's always better to be safe than sorry.